Got a great panel coming up next. We're going to analyze why brands should step up to the plate and get involved in social issues in the first place. Brought to you in partnership with Weber Shandwick. It's titled Transform and Deliver, Why Brands Must Join the Cultural Conversation and Influence Action. Please welcome to the stage our speakers, Molly McKenna, Senior Director, Global Brand Communications at McDonald's, Lindsay Rogers, VP and General Manager at Kellogg's, as well as our moderator, Susan Howe, President at Weber Shandwick. Please welcome them to the stage.
Are we ready? We are. I'm wearing the same shirt that's in my profile picture, so that's a little...
Was that purposeful?
Yeah, it was. It was very purposeful.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks, you guys. It's so great to be in a room full of humans, and, thank you, and to chat about moving in culture. And it really goes along incredibly well with, I think, this whole event. And the awards tonight are one of my favorites because it's great work, but it's work that moves people. So glad to be with you and glad to be in Chicago. I said that I think every PR Week event from now on should be in Chicago. Who's with me? Because it's such a vibrant communications community. So I'm going to quickly introduce my fellow panelists who are change makers themselves. And you heard their names at least, but one thing I learned about the two of them, which I think is super interesting, first of all, they both work on iconic global brands, but secondly, they both started as interns in their respective organizations. So they made change and moves within their own companies to come to these great positions that they're in. So first, Molly, thank you for being here. Molly is Senior Director of Global Brand Communications at McDonald's. She leads the brand communications team, no small feat, really focusing on brand trust, reputation communications, retail and affinity PR, cultural and community communications. So that is a wide swath of work, and you've seen culture move with you. To your left is Lindsay Rogers, and Lindsay is the Vice President General Manager of Salty Snacks category for the Kellogg Company. And I should say that these fabulous speakers have also provided snacks and treats for later. So there are coupons out by the snacks, and the Cheez-Its are on the way. They're in transit. So the Cheez-Its will be here, but the salty snack category includes
Our goal is to make you really hungry today.
So. Indeed. But what I love about Lindsay's path is that she really is a cross-functional leader. She began in the sales organization and moved up through a variety of leadership positions. She was last general manager of the portable wholesome snacks and then moved over to the salty side of the equation. So incredible leaders who have broad experience with iconic brands. And we're going to ask a few questions, but also would welcome questions from any of you, because I know that this room is really tuned into what's happening in culture and these brands represented. So I'll begin quite broadly, jump right in, and let's talk about cultural salience. So what makes things sticky, and what challenges do brands face to stay relevant today, and particularly with this backdrop potentially of purpose, because we know that is in culture right now. And how do you, as cultural leaders, transcend the fads? Lindsay, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Okay. I'll start by saying, well, one, thank you for having me here, Susan. I appreciate it. It's lovely to be here. I always start with my team asking two simple questions. The first is, do we have the right to show up in the space? Okay, so are we credible? The second piece for me is, what role do we play? I think as marketers, it is so easy to see all these really inspirational and fun trends and fads happening throughout the globe, and your instinct is like, I want to do that too. Our brands could do that too. And the reality is, I think less is more within this space, right? Showing up in a really credible and authentic way. So that's one. I think in addition to that, one of the activations that we've done recently is around Cheez-It reality. Now, some people even in my organization is like, what are you doing? Why is Snooki on our Cheez-Its? And the reality is
Snooki might be the first time Snooki is mentioned in this conference. Maybe the first and the last.
might not be the last. So we have Snooki and RuPaul on our Cheez-Its. And how that came to be is we worked with Weber, and we used basically an AI tool to help understand cultural relevance for the coveted Zennial group and understanding that intersection through AI of where Cheez-It and cultural relevance connects, okay, for Zennials. And what we came up with is, of course, reality television. Now, I think each of us have probably been pitched reality TV 500 times over the past couple of years. So my first question is, okay, again, do we have a right to show up here? How are we credible and what role do we play? And it all came back to real cheese and then real reality stars. The realest of reality stars, the OGs, which are Snooki and RuPaul, okay? And so this has been one of our most successful activations, truly. Again, internally, I have a couple of males scratching their head, wondering what we're doing here. But this ended up being one of our most successful activations. Even on Snooki's Instagram reel, it was one of her highest impressions, over 2 million in 3 days. And the reality is it even beat, in terms of views, her own wine launch. People have been comparing it to the likes of Caitlyn Jenner on Wheaties, to Snooki on Cheez-Its, and again, in terms of the realness. So I just go back to maybe not instinctually, you're thinking, hey, this makes a ton of sense, but as you think about it, and as you really connect who our audience is and how to connect in an authentic way through this realness, it really struck.
Those are great tips, though, thinking about, do we have a right? And then what does the data tell us? Like that is a good formula. Molly, anything you want to add to cultural salience, and how do you transcend fads?
Yeah, well, I think what you guys are doing is really fun and awesome. And, we are looking at it from a similar perspective. I think, the fads and things that become a meme quickly the next day can disappear. And so teams are having to move even faster and faster now than we ever have before. So I think the listening is key. And I think similar is kind of, where do you have a meaningful role into that conversation? And so for us, a big part of our strategy, whether it's a real-time moment or a social media post or our broader PR marketing strategy, is all grounded in this whole fan truth strategy. And fan truths for us are really the things that people love about McDonald's. It's, when you dive into the bag and there's some extra fries at the bottom, or that McDonald's Coke truly tastes, Diet Coke truly tastes the best. So it's those things that you know about McDonald's and love, and then how can we use those to propel things and connect them with culture. So they have led to some big campaigns for us. When you think about, everyone has their own order. So, I love a number 2 with Diet Coke, or in the morning, I get my Egg McMuffin and, my coffee customized a certain way. And the truth is, everyone has their McDonald's order, whether you're an everyday Joe like me or a famous person. And so we launched this whole famous orders campaign, which allowed people to get Travis Scott's order or Sweetie's order. And that really then, was grounded in what people love about McDonald's, but made it really relevant to the next generation. And even, real-time opportunities. The Little Miss trend was huge, this summer. And for us, that seemed like a natural way to jump in, that, you can be Little Miss McDonald's Diet Coke or Little Miss Steal My Fries. And so those were really easy, natural ways for us to jump in. So there's tons of trends. You can't jump into all, but I think key is really being able to have that credible insight and how it makes it connect to your brand.
Awesome. I was just checking to see if anything's come in, and there have, but we'll hold those for a few minutes. So, okay. You both work on incredible brands and also observe what's happening in the world of culture and purpose. So I guess my next question is, who do you admire, and what brands do you see that move from simply participating in culture to actually driving and changing culture. So, Molly, do you want to go first this time? Like, what do you see out there that you have some professional envy about, or that you just think there's something to be learned from the way that they made a cultural move?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, I think there's a lot of the obvious, Nikes of the world that are just really leading culture and doing things, just doing amazing things. I think, a brand, maybe because of my 3 kids that are big fans, but also some of my fabulous colleagues that are here are big fans too. But Crocs is a company that I think has really reinvented itself. They, used to be kind of the comfort wear for medical staff or for, kids 5 and under. And now they're selling out just huge collabs. They just did one with Disney Cars, which again, you would really unexpect, huge with Gen Z. And they've just been really smart about where they've shown up and how they've shown up. They did a recent collaboration with Balenciaga, which is another brand that I think is also, hugely on the move and really making itself accessible to Gen Z. So those would be 10. I think, Google Pixel's another one with their Real Tone campaign and making skin tone more accessible on their devices, really leading with purpose. So those would be a few I would mention.
Those are good ones. That one is one whose time has come. Like, it was so, when I saw it, I was like, why didn't we do this a decade ago? It's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, Lindsay, over to you. Who's on your watch, admire, envy, learn from list in terms of culture?
Yep. One of the most interesting for me is actually home and garden TV, right? You think HD TV, home and garden TV, and I was thinking about this the other day, and I was guilty of watching it the other day, and all of our brands show up. It's a multimedia giant, and it started about 30 years ago, and it basically had very little opportunity to succeed, right? Or at least investors would think so. And the reality is it's broken all, expectations, because if you think about HGTV, again, we're all probably watching it in some capacity, and that network sets the trends for all things home, right? Every contractor is like, oh my gosh, stop watching HGTV, please stop. Meanwhile, Lowe's and Home Depot are like, thank goodness for HGTV. And then you think even about the celebrities, right? That all of these people are now household names, which years ago you would have never thought a cooking channel or a home network channel, Fixer Upper, would be something that everyone is watching, following, and every suburb in America has, farmhouse style right now because of Chip and Joanna. So I just go back, and I mean, when you think about the odds and you think about where it started, you even think about the name, Home and Garden TV, but yet you think about how it's transformed, and it truly does set culture. To me, it's like the Vogue of home. Right? I mean, it starts through HGTV and makes its way through culturally, whether it's high-end or whether it's mainstream. So that's one
The
where
Vogue of home, I like
the
it.
Vogue of home, yeah, home and garden.
Molly, there's a follow-up question just about your example with Little Miss, and the question is, you don't have to answer it completely, what legal ramifications, but you don't have to go there with legal, but like, how do you navigate seeing trends and still having McDonald's have a voice in that? So.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the thing that's amazing about Little Miss is when organically your fans create it for you. So a lot of the content was actually just created by fans and who were then sharing and they share it for you. So that to me is the epitome of culture, when you don't even have to put it out there. So so those are situations when it's a little easier for us to get on board when it's kind of already naturally happening.
Good. For me, I would say the kind of OG from participating and contributing, it would be Patagonia, not a client, just admire, and like, could they raise the stakes any higher? And I'm sure that has been a topic here and will continue to be, but if only hats off to them. All right, so moving on, and I think this is interesting to all of us who work across categories or with multiple clients or multiple brands. And so for you, Lindsay, if you all are not familiar with the salty snack portfolio, two of the iconic brands are Pringles and Cheez-Its. Very different brands, very different positionings. How do you differentiate in culture and stay authentic, having kind of this wide berth where you need to look after both of them? And I think many of us might be able to identify that with that challenge of multiple parts of your brain thinking about different challenges.
I would start by saying I think for Cheez-It and Pringles, we're actually pretty fortunate that we don't have to sit and think about how we draw distinction between the two, because naturally, to your point, you know, they each have their own personalities, they each have their own belief system, and you see that through consumer tourists, and I think you mentioned that as well. Consumer insights around the brand specifically is what we leverage so often to understand, like, where should we take Cheez-It? Where can we take Pringles? So for example, whether it's innovation, whether it's comms, whether it's creative direction, you know, things like Cheez-It Extra Toasty. That is an innovation that came out probably a decade ago. That's another one where it launched and people are like, what are you guys doing? This is not interesting. Retailers are like, we don't want this, okay? And where it came from is social listening. And some of you can relate. It's similar to what you talked about, digging to the bottom to get that last fry. But the reality is there are some people who dig through the box of Cheez-It and find that extra toasty one, and they savor that moment because they just love that extra toasty Cheez-It, and it tastes different to them, and it looks different, and the texture is different, and all those things. And so we made a box of them, okay? And to this day,
I want those.
it exists, and I will get you some. I will get you some, Susan. But it's like a top 5 SKU for us. So again, it just goes back to, it's a behavior that's already happening, and we're listening. Another example is last year, or this year, for the Super Bowl, we came out with a Pringles spot that was called Can Hands. We called it internally Can Hands. It was called Get Stuck In. That's a human truth. 45% of people admit to getting their hand stuck in a Pringles can. Okay, so we made a Super Bowl spot of it, and we, you know, talked about this man's life of getting his hand stuck in a can and how he went through life with it and had a very successful, lovely life. And there's more examples, right? Cheez-It and wine. So again, just a spoof on ourselves around Cheez-It and wine, which was another very successful activation for us. And so if you go back, I mean, we try our best to ensure, one, just from years of building the brands, but ensuring that we're also listening and understanding how our consumers and, you know, that authentic fandom loves these brands, and that helps to set our North Star as well.
I'm going to jump to the iPad for a moment because this is a great one, and I know that both of you are passionate about the development of your teams and people. So someone asked, I can't find it, my eyes aren't finding it, but paraphrasing, how do you empower your teams to bring forth bold ideas? So that's from the audience, but I like it, and because you're sharing things that are surprising potentially or in the organization that might involve risk, that certainly move culture. So how do you make a team feel, either of you? Because
I was going to say, I don't think it's hard because this team, I see Taylor over there, who's a resident Gen Z, who is constantly, you know, raising her hand and saying, actually, this would be really cool if we did this. And I was like, oh, I've never thought of that. And you're right, that would be really cool. So I think, you know, just, you know, listening and understanding, you know, the great ideas. And I think if you give people a clear vision of what we're trying to achieve and giving them some permission on how to best get there, you're going to see great results. So to me, it's easy when you have, you know, such awesome colleagues.
I would just add, you know, asking questions. I probe a lot. And when I first moved to a new team, my team will like buckle. The new team is like, why is she asking so many questions? Does she not believe us? Does she not, you know, what's wrong with her? And to me, though, that's the best way to understand you're not just doing something, you understand it, you believe in it. And to your point, you're working towards something. And so even as I started, I'm always asking questions. So if there's a really good idea, and again, my pro brother, it's how do we fit in? How does the brand show up? Is it credible? So, continuing to provoke, because the reality is your team, they know a lot of answers. They know answers beyond what I know day in and day out, and they have fantastic ideas, to Molly's point. So for me, it's more about how do I probe, how do I engage to get us there together, right? To hopefully reach a new spot in terms of improvement and making something better and ensuring that we're all grounded in what could be.
I like it. Thank you. Okay, Molly, one for you, and there's a lot in the cues about the adult Happy Meals. So, but my question was, before seeing those, it comes off of this. Is obviously McDonald's has played a role in culture for decades, literally. And so, how do you stand the test of time, and what role does communications play, your team play, in accelerating and the pivots, the changes? Like, how do you help the brand continue to be current after decades of icon status?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think, our iconic brands, Big Mac, McNuggets, the McRib, those are things that are talked about time and time again, and people are really familiar with them. And for us, it's how do we reignite that love with the newest generation who maybe isn't as familiar. So that is really a key thing for us. And so we are trying to, again, do less of, hey, what does McDonald's think our customers would want to hear, which is, I think, more of the old way, into really what are people saying. So the adult Happy Meal is a great example that everyone can really relate to the nostalgia of opening up the Happy Meal box and seeing what toy you might get, and who said that maybe adults wouldn't want that experience too. So, creating this whole experience with a really cool artist, Cactus Plant Flea Market, where we were able to, create this cool box experience where adults can have a little fun too and get some toys. And it did become part of culture. Many late night shows, SNL did a really hilarious spoof with the McDonald Line characters, which was another piece that was able to connect. The toys were all the old McDonald Line characters, and everyone really can feel that connection. So again, I think it's taking what you're known for and then really applying it to culture. And things like people online actually hack our menu all the time. So people often don't just get, a double cheeseburger. They want a side of nuggets, and they put the nuggets on it, or the French fries. And so we actually said, hey, what if we created this menu hacks campaign? And so our team is really listening and helping to be the engine for what are we hearing on social media, what are customers talking about, and then how can we help best position it to make it really hit home, and who are the influencers and media that we should be connecting with to get it out there. So it really makes the work a lot of fun when you truly listen to what people who actually love your brand are talking about.
For either of you, and certainly you don't need to name specifics, but there's a good question in here, and I think it goes to the overall theme of the conference. Like, are there examples where you thought about jumping into something and chose not to? Again, I'm sure you wouldn't want to share what you chose not to do, but can you share anything about a time that happened and what led you to the decision of no? Like, anything come to mind?
Oh, it happens all the time for us.
Yeah, there was a recent example where a celebrity had made some comments against one of our brands, and we went back and forth, and I think it was all in good nature. I mean, again, these are, to your point, these are happening every day. And it was interesting because so many people, because of the level of celebrity that made the comment, right, was so, A-list type level. Everyone's like, we have to react, because wow, wouldn't that be cool if? And again, it goes back to sometimes less is just more, right? Like, what role, this was kind of my second question, what role do we play in doing that? Like, it's not how do we benefit, but it's like, how does that come back and drive authenticity and credibility against our brand versus just, oh, we're so lucky one of our major brands had a celebrity, make a comment about us. So, it's a minor example. I think it happens quite often, but I think the key takeaway for me again is just the instinct sometimes as a marketer is like, wow, this is cool, let's engage. And the reality is, should we be showing up here, and what does our brand really do and say and benefit for the long term against reacting?
Yeah, I think you said it so well. And I think it's easy internally to often feel like, oh my gosh, we have to do something, we have to react. And really, what are you going to add to the conversation? And are you taking action? If it's a social issue, are you putting your money where your mouth is? So I think all those things are really key questions that you have to be smart and act before, you jump into the conversation, because there's expectations there.
I see that we are exactly at time, so I thank you all for coming. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Lindsay
Thanks,
and
everyone.
Molly.
Thank you.